Hi, I'm Chris Pearmund, and we're going to film a few episodes of viticulture and enology in Virginia vineyards and wineries to help explain to you what makes Virginia different, why we think we are good at what we do, what we have learned over the last several decades of growing grapes and making wine, and to share with you some of the expertise in many Virginia vineyards and wineries. Today we're standing in Merriweather Vineyard. It's a vineyard that was planted in 1976. It is now entirely planted to Chardonnay. In 1976, this vineyard had 9 different grape varieties, and we tried to learn through time what grew best here. Those 9 grape varieties have been reduced as again into 1 to Chardonnay, and at the beginning, this vineyard ran 1 acre of east to west and 1 acre north to south. When you have a vineyard running east to west, as the sun rises and falls, it's going to have less sun interaction on the fruit. When you have a panel of fruit that goes east to west, the sun in the morning, as we are now, will hit the fruit, bring riper flavors, reduce malic acid content, reduce a lot of moisture on the fruit first thing in the morning when we have early morning dews, and provide riper, more tropical flavors. In the middle of the daytime, when the sun is at its strongest, the canopy will help protect the fruit from sunburning, and late afternoon, again, there'll be sun available to the fruit for riper tropical flavors. This aids in what we like to have is quality fruit. As we are here in the beginning of September, what seems to be important in any fruit is even ripening. As this fruit cluster was in the sun, the backside of it, which is a bit darker green, had less sun interaction to it. If you were to taste the 2 sides of the fruit cluster and the different berries, one is going to have higher acid content, not quite as high as sugar. One will be more ripe, more flavorful, and less grapefruity, if you will. The key of quality in vineyard production is even ripeness, and also different layers of flavor. So you do have some uneven ripening between even the same cluster or from vine to vine or different parts of the vineyard, but these can also work in synergy. So when people discuss flavors of a vine, some will have maybe some ripe peach flavors, which would come from this part of the cluster, or some lemon zest or more grapefruity type flavors of higher acid that would come from actually the same cluster on other sides. And as you multiply that across hundreds of thousands of clusters in a vineyard, our goal is to tighten the difference between less ripe and overly ripe fruit. So as one goes through the vineyard in the springtime, to give you a brief overview, a vine will be pruned in the springtime. As the vines grow, we will selectively remove canes, which are maybe overpopulated. We will selectively remove leaves to have more fruit available. If a cane is weaker, such as this one, we will allow only 1 cluster per weak cane. If the cane is strong and is kind of on its own, maybe 2 clusters of fruit. So every time people go through the vineyard, we will reduce the cluster count by maybe 10% and do that several times to start from, say, 4 or 5 tons an acre and work our way down to 2 or 3 tons an acre by selectively removing the less ripe of that fruit to rise the floor of quality and even ripeness. I don't know if you can see the nuanced differences between each side of the cluster, where the darker green is a little more hidden from the sun and the more amber, a bit more direct sun. But even the flavor differences between each side of this cluster is significantly different. And those help add nuanced flavors to the finished wine, but we don't want too much of a difference. We really try to manage the vineyard to within a certain margin of difference. Sauvignon Blancs, for example, it's very important to have some ripe and some of the tart green cluster flavors. But either way, it's tasty. This vineyard, now about 30 years old, has some nice qualities to it. But over the course of time, these cordons may need to be replaced. So we do have kicker canes that come up for eventual replacement if they need to be replaced. Also, a vine may die on occasion, get run over by a tractor, disease, whatever. And in that case, they need to be replanted. There are over 24 different cultivars or subspecies of Chardonnay. In this particular vineyard, there's 11 different subspecies. This vine, for example, is about 5 years old. It's in its first full year of production, and it's a different subspecies or cultivar than the old vines. but will help layer in different subtle nuances of flavor. The different clones are normally named after numbers, very romantically. Clone or cultivar number 75, 76, 95, 96, 15, 4, UC Davis clone numbers. But it's interesting to have the flavor differences. They have different size of clusters. Some of them are looser clusters, tighter clusters. These small little clusters are very, very aromatic. They don't produce as much fruit in a vineyard, but they do bring in a much higher quality and better aromatic. So by layering in these different flavors in the vineyard, the final product becomes much more complex. I'm Chris Pearmund, and I hope you drink more Virginia wine.